Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of the Guitarist Corner. This is our once a month show where we gather some fellow guitar players to talk about guitar stuff. We've got in the house today, we've got Jim Bacchi, we've got Sean Tonar and Christian Canzoneri. What's happening, everybody? We're here to talk Fender players today. So last month was our favorite Gibson players, and we're trying to pick guys that, generally speaking, they're most known for playing that particular brand. Today is all about Fender. So we've asked everybody to kind of put together a list of their 5 favorite guys who play pretty much Strats or Tellys. That's kind of what we're looking at here, either one or the other or both. And I think we've got some honorable mentions. So we're gonna have Chris kick us off today with his first choice. Then we'll go Sean, Jim, and myself, and we'll go round and round till we get to our number 1.
Okay, my number 5, he's a jazz guy, plays Telecasters all the time. He's fairly popular. I mean, I know a few people who've heard of him who aren't like total nerds and music heads and whatever, but I'm going with Julian Lage. He is, he's pretty young. He's played with a few different people, very, very talented, very interesting player. A couple of the guys on my list aren't super well known, so I had picked like a few like YouTube videos to check out, maybe for people who hadn't heard of him. He does, if you search for "I'll Be Seeing You," the old standard. The guy just, plays this great intro. It's very jazzy. Then he starts doing these like classical scales, and very versatile, very interesting. One of the few guys in jazz that plays a Telecaster almost exclusively, although there are others. But yeah, Julian Lage, number 5.
Do you remember hearing him on the new version of Prairie Home Companion with Chris Thiele, the virtuoso mandolinist?
No, I don't do radio.
That's where I heard Julian first. Yeah, so yeah, I'm sure some of the folks out there probably heard him there as well.
Yeah, he's really interesting. Like some people aren't into that kind of stuff. I don't listen to jazz all the time, usually not guitar, to tell you the truth, but entertains the hell out of me. So check him out.
He's really good. One of my customers from my day job actually turned me on to him about like 2 years ago, and I had never heard the guy before. Really tasty player, very melodic, just classy stuff too. Really good.
Yeah, very, very talented.
Yeah, it's Lage, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Yep. It's not Lodge like John Lodge from the Moody Blues.
No, it's Lage, like
Lage.
You went to a French cabin.
Yeah. All right, Sean, who do you got for number 5?
Well, I've got some classic guys that I think have to be mentioned, but I also want to shine the light on a younger guy that's making a lot of waves lately. Are you familiar with a group called Wolfpack? Do you know?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, they've been gotten a lot of attention lately because they have a fantastic bass player. His name's Joe Dart, and they have a tune called Dean Town, which is obviously an homage to Weather Report's Teen Town that Jocko did. So it's those kind of pumping steady 16th notes just for 5 minutes. Great tune. They have a fantastic guitar player as well, and his name is Corey Wong, and he's doing a lot of stuff on his own lately as well. But I would check out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, I love that airtight funk kind of on the Strat stuff, and this guy just does it beautifully. It's like the next generation of Nile Rodgers and that kind of stuff, and I love that stuff. And just a terribly funky individual, great band. Check out. There is a awesome version where Bernard Purdie, the famous drummer, session drummer, that played on a lot of Steely Dan's greatest stuff, including Kid Charlemagne, if I remember correctly. Anyhow, he sat in with Wolfpack and played Kid Charlemagne, and Corey nailed that solo note for note. But on top of that, the other guitar player harmonized it Allman Brothers style with him. So go check it out. It'll blow your mind. And at the end, they do that. There's like a bend, and he does one tap on the fretboard, and they like reach over and tap each other's guitars when they do the bend. It's ridiculous. So yeah, Corey Wong, Wolfpack. That's with a V, like Vulfpeck, I think.
I think, Sean, you brought him up like a while ago, like on either on one of the In the Prog Seat shows or before or after we taped, and I went and checked him out and listened to a couple things. Yeah, that guy's pretty good.
Yeah, he's really something else.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Jim, with the Thin Lizzy shirt. Good morning.
Yeah. So this whole conversation about Fender, it's weird because this is going to be a little bit out of the SOT audience, but completely, you cannot talk about Fender guitars in rock music without talking about surf music. So,
Sure.
And I'm not talking about the Beach Boys or Jan and Dean. I'm talking Dick Dale, Bel Airs, the lively ones. Because not only is it's all Fender guitars all the time, it's also all Fender amps and reverb tanks. So, and there is so much surf music, modern surf music in the world, and it's all based, much of it is rooted in that traditional early 60s pre-Beatles surf music. So like, again, Dick Dale. I mean, if you listen to Dick Dale, Miserlou, and most people, I'll break it down for most people so that really understand it. It's basically the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, right? Kind of really brought back that whole music to the fore in 1990, whatever, when it came out. And that song Miserlou is as aggressive as you can get, and it's like 1963 or whenever that came out. That staccato picking, super heavy.
And that wax scale he's using, like a double harmonic minor, it almost reminds me of the solo in YYZ. It's that same kind of diminished stacking thing going on, sort of. Right. And it's like, who else was doing that back then?
I don't know. It was a traditional. It's a traditional Middle Eastern song. I'm not sure it's Turkish or Indian. I don't remember. But it's a traditional Middle Eastern folk song, and he took it and he, if you've ever stood in front of a Fender dual Showman amp, super loud, it's basically like standing in front of Man of War. It's crazy. So I feel like people that are really into guitars and guitar music, there is so many there's surf festivals all over the United States. There's one in Asbury Park, New Jersey. There's one out here in LA that my friend Jeff Hansen puts on, Surf Guitar 101 convention. There's one in Livorno, Italy that my friend Lorenzo Valdembrini, Surfer Joe, his band is called, they put it, and 3 days of like 10 hours a day of reverb, instrumental, no singing, and blasting surf guitars. So there are a lot of great, first of all, you got to know the classics. You got to know, obviously Miserlou, Dick Dale, Mr. Moto by the Bel Airs, Surf Rider by the Lively Ones. Probably most famous would be Pipeline by the Chantays. And even to that fact, I always say there's a correlation between metal guitar and surf guitar. It's like one has reverb, one has a ton of distortion. So, and to prove that point, Anthrax did a version of Pipeline a long time ago.
I think Stevie Ray Vaughan did too.
Probably, yeah. I mean, if you're into guitar playing, and it's pre-Beatles, so there's no vocals. It was just a very short-lived thing, and then the Beatles came and basically kicked everything to the curb. But surf music was super popular in the 1963, 64. By 1965, it was done. But there was a lot of instrumental, the Ventures and the Shadows, but weren't really surf music, but they were instrumental guitar music. But that's definitive Fender guitar sound. It's like a Jazzmaster and a Jaguar. Some people use Strats, but it's a beautiful sound. They use the reverb tanks, the Fender reverb tanks. The real guys that are hardcore get the reverb tanks and the dual Showman, the old amps. And, it's still today there. You go in any country in the world and there's surf bands. They're everywhere. And it's a very active scene. It's very small. But, I have a band, like we were talking about, my band Tikiaki 5-0 is sort of an exotic surf band, where it's instrumental surf guitar. The guitar is very clean, lots of reverb. So there are a couple of really key guys, and I guess I'm going to name my favorite and then a couple that are worth mentioning just as much. There's a guy out here named Dave Ronsky. He plays for a band called Slacktone. It's like, I don't expect anybody to really know. if you're into surf music, you know. He works for the Fender Custom Shop in Corona, and the guy is a wizard with guitar tone. I mean, he's got all his amps dialed in. He could like tell the difference between what battery is in the pedal. I mean, he's really dialed in, and he's an amazing player and has the most amazing surf guitar tone ever. So I would say, in terms of modern guys, he's the best out there. But there's a couple of, I mentioned my friend Lorenzo, Surfer Joe, and there's a bunch of others that are just tons of great guys. The Madeira, my friend Yvonne from the Madeira. And these are all small bands, but like you go to lots of cities have surf guitar still. So my favorite album personally is by a local band here called the Blue Hawaiians. Came out in like 1995 or 6. Kind of like sort of what I do, exotic surf music, really traditional sounding, but done with interesting stuff. So they have an album called Sway, the Blue Hawaiian Sway, amazing album. And as far as guitar players go, I'm going to go Dick Dale for the old originals and Dave Ronsky from Slacktone for the new guys. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to the surf guitar community because there's so many of them. They're super supportive and they're very enthusiastic about surf. So there you go. Dave Ronsky, surf music, Dick Dale, yada, yada, yada. So
I love a good dose of that stuff. And am I right that it's usually minor key? It always has kind of a melancholy to it.
It's half and half. There's a lot of stuff in major keys as well. It's both. But yeah, it uses both. There's a lot of minor key stuff. And like I said, a lot of the chord progressions and riffs are very much like a traditional metal riff. They just have reverb and no
it's clean.
Distortion. Yeah. It's clean. And I got to tell you, and you know this, it is way harder to play super clean like that than to play with distortion. If you don't hit the note exactly, it dies. And I've been doing it for like 11, 12 years now. I still struggle every time I play, like, because you just want more balls out of it, but that's not the sound. It's clean.
Right. Well,
clean.
Didn't Dick use like 13s? He used super heavy strings too.
Super heavy strings, and he was super aggressive, and he played freaking loud because I'd seen him before he passed away, and the guys from Agent Orange used to back him up, and he would have 2 dual Showmans fully all the way up, and they are super loud, and sure. 2 15s in each cabinet. They are super loud, so it is incredibly loud. So
while you're on the subject of surf, I'd like to mention a modern surf album I ran across I really like. Have you guys heard of a guitar player named Herschel Yadovitz? He's played with Chris Isaak for probably 20 years now, maybe more. You might remember Chris Isaak used to have a TV show on Showtime that was a kind of a comedy about his band and the situations they wind up in each week. Cool show.
Jimmy Wills was his guitar player.
He had a different guy, like the guy on Wicked Game that you hear doing all that bar work and stuff. That's not Herschel. That's Jimmy Wills. Yeah. But Herschel did a really cool album a few years ago called Narrabeen, which is a coast in Australia where people go to surf, and a great modern surf album with all the classic tones on it. Really tasty stuff.
Yeah, cool. I'll have to check that out.
I think you'd like it.
Yeah, right on.
Well, from surf music, how about we move over to the blues a little bit, right? Because another style of music that's pretty much associated with Fender players, and in this case, the Stratocaster. I don't know of too many guys who are as associated with one guitar as much as this guy was. He's from Ireland. I think we know where we're going on this. So a little Rory Gallagher.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the greats. Guy left us way too soon and probably never got his just due while he was alive. I think, since he passed away, he's been kind of relegated to one of the guitar immortals. But, the Irish Tour is, one of his most known albums. I would argue that his greatest guitar statement ever is the live at the Isle of Wight with his band Taste, which is right before he went solo. And this is a guy who could do it all. He was a really good singer. He had tremendous speed in his playing. He knew both like the kind of Louisiana blues. He could do the Chicago blues. He could play rock and roll when he wanted to. So much emotion, a great showman, and what a tone. what a tone. And he had just played this beat up Strat like his whole career. And, you know, another really good live album. I personally prefer most of his live albums to his studio albums, although, you know, stuff like Calling Card is really good. But, you know, a lot of great songs, and a guy that, you know, was asked to join the Rolling Stones. Could you imagine if that actually happened? How that might have changed his career a little bit. I don't know if that would have been a perfect fit for him, because I think what he did was where he needed to be. But just a top showman, top bluesman, rock and roll player too. Just all around great guitar player, and a really good like acoustic bottleneck player too, I might add. Even though that's not really my thing, I prefer him, you know, doing his pure electric stuff. But yeah, really great player. So that's my number 5.
Did you ever see him live, Pete?
Once I saw him open for Rush.
Me too. I was going to ask you if you were at that show.
Yep, that was at was that the Garden Show or the Brendan Byrne Arena? It was one of those.
Brendan Byrne Arena, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. That was Signals tour, right?
Signals, yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. Weird fit, I thought, but I didn't know who the hell he was at the time. I was like, oh, okay, I've heard of him, but I thought it was kind of a weird fit. But looking back on it, I wish I would have paid more attention to his set that night.
Alex is a big fan of his, actually.
Yeah,
I saw a little interview with Alex saying that he used to watch when they toured with him. He used to watch him play, and they got along great. And he really liked Rory Gallagher style a lot. And so, yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense in that way. If for Signals tour, probably not. It was probably a little too different. You know, maybe in the 70s they were a closer fit. So, but yeah, I'm glad I got to see him once. He played electric sitar at that show.
He did, yeah, he did.
One song I remember was Shaped Like the United States.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to see him. Yeah, he was really good.
And, you know, an interesting guy too. I mean, were there any guys playing kind of like blues-based music back then, using pitch harmonics like he did? I mean, it's like he was doing some different stuff that you didn't normally hear from like a bluesy player.
Does he predate Billy Gibbons?
Yeah, I think. Well, probably. I think ZZ Top didn't come on the scene until about 70, so he was doing the Taste thing before then, because I think the first Taste album was 68, I think. So I don't know.
Good question.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, Chris, back to you.
Okay, my number 4 is Cory Wong.
Now I know you're laughing.
Yeah. So yeah, I love the guy. He's awesome. You know, he's not officially a member of Wolfpack, even though he's been on every single album and he tours with them every single time they go out. He's not really in the band. Go figure.
I think it's about time to make it official.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, what else is he doing? But he's got that TV show on YouTube now. Like the whole pandemic, he was doing like a weekly variety show thing with some unknown but incredibly talented players. If you don't check that out, there's a, I think it's actually a Fender official video. It's called Airplane Mode. It's just him sitting at Red Rocks playing, you know, a cappella guitar by himself. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
So yeah, Cory Wong ×2.
Must be something to this guy.
Yeah, the loosest right hand in the business, man. That guy is he's so in the pocket. Just his rhythmic style is like unbelievably on.
Do you think Fenders lend themselves better to that kind of playing than Gibsons?
Yes. I mean, this
agree.
guy, he's always popping the E string on and off the pickup as part of his little, so he's hitting it like a pick scrape and a slap with the thumb on, and that string is hitting the magnet on the bridge pickup.
Interesting.
Oh yeah.
I think that's part of what he does. And I wouldn't, I think a Strat is perfect for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we really didn't focus a whole lot on that kind of rhythmic playing on the Gibson show. And I think it's because that, those lend themselves, I don't know. I could be digging myself a hole here, but I just think
it's working for him.
Yeah.
He does a whole bunch of tutorials too, where you can, he'll dissect his right hand technique. And it's just like, I'll watch 2 seconds and be like, you know what? I'm not going to live long enough to practice enough to even get sort of shitty at it. So, stop watching. But yeah, he's great.
Oh, wait, was it me? One of the most popular guitarists of the 80s, Andy Summers from The Police. That's right. You know, I think him and his Telecaster are pretty iconic pairing. And you know, he went for the humbucker kind of in the neck position, which some people do with the Tele. It's, you know, I think it they are longing for kind of a Gibson tone, which is understandable. And just, you know, he's not really known as a rhythmic. You know, this is a different kind of rhythm playing compared to the funky stuff we were just talking about a minute ago. This is more like hit one chord and let the effects do the work for you kind of school of thought, I think. Very textural. And, you know, I think, you know, just the invention of chorus kind of spawned a whole new school of thought when it came to guitar playing, when it came to rhythm, and then mix in, you know, the delay. And you know, that was fresh in 1978. It definitely ran its course, but he was the dean of the textural school, is how I'd put it. And I'd say he had a big influence on Alex Lifeson from, you know, 1980 to 1987-ish. So and I liked what Alex did with it, because he kind of took what Andy was doing and gave it more heft. So that's actually some of my favorite Alex stuff. Although I wouldn't put Alex on a Fender list. He had his Fender era, but you know, he's a Gibson man as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
I put him on as an honorable mention because the stuff he did do with the Strat was his most iconic, their most iconic music, you know, Moving Pictures and Permanent Waves and Signals. Those are their biggest, most iconic records. So he kind of carved out his little place in the Strat world just on Moving Pictures alone.
Oh, agreed. And you know, he went for those humbucker on the Strat kind of tones, so it wasn't you know, he didn't get into that single coil stuff until, you know, Hold Your Fire, when he got those active single coil pickups on those signature guitars. And it's very glassy, but that's the best thing I can say about it. You know, not my favorite era for him. I prefer the fat Strats he was using earlier in the 80s.
Yeah, right on.
All right, Jim, what do you got next?
Okay, you know, I was kind of wondering about what to do, because I probably normally would have gone with Joe Walsh for my number 4, because he's so great and he's so synonymous with that great Strat sound. But I was listening to this record last week and I said, you know what? I really like this guy and what he does with a Strat. And you guys are going to laugh. But if Butch was here, he would be cheering. And so what do you get when you take a little bit of Brian May, a little bit of Jimmy Page, and a whole lot of Ace Frehley and put it in a Strat? Punky Meadows.
Oh, okay.
So Punky Meadows is basically the Strat equivalent of Ace Frehley, right? I mean, he plays a lot like him. He plays in the same kind of band. Hell, Frank Zappa wrote a song making fun of him.
Punky.
He deserves something, you know. But I was listening to On Earth as It Is in Heaven album last week, and I just his sound is so Stratty. Like, he didn't try to hot rod it with humbuckers or anything. It's straight single coil through a Marshall. He plays some, and it's just so, you know, it's part Richie Blackmore, a little bit of Brian May, a little bit of Page, a little bit of Ace, a lot of Ace Frehley, and just kind of, I don't know, he was just cool. And that song, That Magic Touch, from that album has a real nice kind of Brian May sort of feel to it. I said, you know what? I like Punky Meadows. And he, you know, he's all Strat all the time. The white Strat is him. Still, I'm sure he's playing it to this day. And like I said, Butch would be cheering if he was here today. But I don't know. I know he's not the greatest guitar player in the world, but I don't think he's as bad, because people just look at them and go, oh, they're ridiculous. But they're actually really good, musically a good band.
They are.
And I love, especially those early first 2 records, especially and On Earth. But I like Punky. I'm gonna cheer for Punky today. So Punky Meadows is my number 4.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Now, I want to clear something up. Frank Zappa wasn't making fun of Punky Meadows. He was making fun of Terry Bozzio for being a Punky Meadows fan.
That is true.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Terry Bozzio was a fan of Punky Meadows.
yeah.
It was a petulant thing,
Yeah.
and he was having a frenzy.
Petulant and having a frenzy.
I want to hear more about this.
But you just got to go play Punky's Whips.
Yeah,
That's
listen to
the
Punky's
homage to
Whips
Punky.
and-
It tells you the whole story of young Terry Bozzio, who fell
Up
in
in New
love
York,
with
yeah.
the flaxen-haired singer from Angel, or guitar
Out
player.
in
Excuse me. Yeah.
Rictus.
Yes.
Yeah.
I promise not to. Never mind.
Yeah. Oh, the Zappa fans are all laughing their asses off.
Oh, Punky.
So my next guy was originally going to be a dude who got his start playing mostly Strats, but I honestly don't think he's been playing Strats since the early 80s. He's been playing something else, another guitar. I'll mention him in my honorable mentions, but I'm not going to put him in my top five. He's easily a top five guitar player, but seeing as he hasn't played Strats in so long, I'm going to save him for later. I'm going to talk about a guy instead who was pretty much a Strat and a Telly guy for the most part. Occasionally you'd see him playing like an SG, but talking about Mr. Terry Kath from Chicago.
Nice.
And, you know, if you're going to pick one album, Chicago Transit Authority is the one, but, you know, you can make a case for the second and third or any of the ones that he appeared on until his untimely death. Yeah, there he is.
And the famous Telly with the pig nose stickers all over it.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That is his. There's a movie about him where his daughter found that guitar all these years later. It's definitely
Great
worth checking
film.
out.
Great film.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That big fat humbucker. I mean, the guy was so funky. He was so bluesy. He was just a great showman, a great songwriter, really good singer. I mean,
Oh,
for my money,
yeah.
he was
Really
the-
good everything. Yeah, I'm a big Terry Kath fan.
Mhm.
But it's funny, the inside of the CTA album has him playing an SG. So that whole time I thought he was he was an SG guy.
Yeah.
He had played a bit of everything, but I think he kind of settled on that Telly
On that
towards the
Telly.
end there and only played that. But you know, you see him with that Tanglewood footage playing a Strat.
Yeah.
You see him playing the what's the Les Paul that with the active pickups that came out in the early '70s, the Artist or something like that. Remember they're kind of brown with the weird black pickups that are sideways.
Oh, the recording.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, he played that for a while too, but then really got into Fenders, I think, and stayed there.
I mean, he could tear it up. Tear it up.
Oh man.
Oh my God, yeah.
One of the greatest kind of like I don't even want to call him unknown, but I think to the masses he was always pretty unknown and just an amazing musician. You think, you know, that around the time that he died, he was talking about leaving the band and doing a solo career. Could you only imagine what that would have been like? Ugh.
I can't imagine him in the '80s. That just doesn't compute.
Well, yeah, true.
Yeah.
He's so definitively 70s. It is kind of hard to figure out what he would have done in the Peter Cetera era of Chicago.
Right.
Well, yeah, I think if he would have just left the band and done his own thing, and it'd just be interesting to see what directions he would have gone. Kind of almost like parallel, like Tommy Bolin to an extent. You know, Tommy also was starting to get into some cool things when he started his solo career, and then bloop, he's gone. So, yeah, we'll never know. But yeah, that guy could burn on the telly like no other, and what a just killer tone, killer voice, great showman, love him. So Terry Kath, my number 4.
Right on.
Great.
Back to Chris.
Okay, this guy probably most people have heard of. A little on the nose for me. I usually try to do something that I don't think other people are going to pick, but I sat around this afternoon watching some YouTube videos of this guy and was blown away all over again. I'm talking about Yngwie. You know, he's kind of become sort of a joke now. I mean, you know, his on-stage stuff, throwing the pick every 30 seconds and, you know, basically, and sitting there like his hair's blowing in the wind when he's indoors and, you know, that kind of stuff. And, you know, it's a little bit much for some people, but I watched, geez, it must have been 89, 90, this video of him doing Black Star. And I'm just like, man, this guy was perfect for the time back then. You know, and I saw him when we were kids. It's the closest I've ever actually been to somebody on stage. I think I had like third row seats, you know, and it was an amazing show. Everything, it was one of those nights, you know, everything worked out, got there on time, managed to find stuff that we needed to eat and drink, and got up real close, and it was just a killer show. But the guy, I mean, come on, I find he's always interesting. Shredding can get a little bit much, and a lot of these other guys, didn't bring in the classical angle. A lot of other guys did, but I always find, he was entertaining, unbelievably talented, the true sense of the word virtuoso, and today, I got back into him. I'm going to be listening to Yngwie for like the next month now. I can feel it.
Do it.
So,
Yeah, before we went on the air, we were talking about what a great tone he had, and he didn't go for the carved out Eddie Van Halen wannabe Strat with the humbucker. He just used single coils, and he used DiMarzios. He had some hot ones, but he got a great tone that was heavy as can be, and out of that pickup configuration like nobody else did.
You need that articulation when you're picking like that. It could all blend together into who knows what when you're using a little bit too much.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But, and what a bitchin' vibrato, man.
Yeah. Just a lot of fun.
He really brought that. Like he he's a game changer. He invented a style, for sure. I mean, it was obviously a lot Richie Blackmore, but with so much speed and perfect dexterity. And he gets high on his own fumes now and whatever. But I mean, you got to hand it to like every metal shredder has him to thank for basically inventing that style of guitar.
I mean, do you remember when that first album came out? I mean, that was just like, back to the woodshed, all of you.
Yeah, I was just like, I suck. I'll never be able to do that.
On the Alcatraz album, I mean, that was when that first came out. I mean, for me, he's the guy who made it cool to have the listeners really want to wait to hear the guitar solo again. And have that guitar solo be so memorable. And then the one difference that he would do from Blackmore is you would go see Yngwie live and he played those guitar solos exactly like you heard him on the album. Whereas Blackmore didn't really give a fuck. He's like, I'm going to play it however I want to play it on any given night. He would never play any solo the same way twice. Yngwie was like, these people, I spent a lot of time constructing these solos, putting them on the records. That's how the fans heard them. That's how I'm going to play them live. And that was pretty cool, I think, because that was something different.
Sure. That first album, I think, is just one of the greatest metal albums of the 80s. Easy.
Yeah, it's killer.
I had it. I loved it.
And Marching Out is my favorite album by his.
That one's great too. The first two or three, after that, I kind of lost interest. But
in the 80s, he was untouchable.
Yeah.
And that album with Joe Lynn Turner was amazing. And I think that was the band.
The fourth one, yeah,
Odyssey, yeah. And unfortunately, too many egos in that band, right?
And that Alcatraz stuff, I guess that's where I heard him first. Before that solo album even came out, we were listening to No Parole from Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
And just going, who is this guy? What?
Yeah. What's the first song on that album?
Island in the Sun.
I remember hearing that when the solo came, and I was just like, holy crap. It's like trying to learn it. I'm like, there's no way. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, all his solos do that for the last 35 or 40, 40 years.
It was those scales he was using. He going for the diminished runs and classical harmonic minor,
violin solos, violin scales.
Yeah, I dig that. We probably heard Al Di Meola do some of that stuff 10 years earlier, but nobody, in rock was paying attention to him.
Yeah.
But for rock guys, it was like that. If he had just been playing fast blues licks, I don't think he would have been half as effective as he was. The kind of Bach rock thing was fresh.
Yep.
It was new.
Yeah.
All right, Sean, what do you got?
Well, let me see. Well, again, this is another guy that was a Fender player from the get-go. And then another company came along and offered to make him his own guitar, which basically was a Fender as well. When you get down to it, a Telly with Strat horns on it. I'm talking about Steve Morse from the Dixie Dregs.
Oh, yeah.
You might remember his Franken Telly here with like 10 different pickups on it of every configuration you can think of. And yeah, this was, he was definitely a Fender guy from the get-go. And his signature Music Man guitar is more of the same basically. And yeah, I just love his playing. I love his writing and arranging in particular. He seemed like he was inspired by John McLaughlin and Mahavishnu and stuff in that ballpark. He kind of did his own kind of southern tinged version of it. And just great diversity on those Dregs albums. You get progressive rock, you get fusion, and then they do this barn burning chicken picking thing that would just make you go. He was, and then he'd break out a classical nylon string and play some beautiful Baroque stuff for you, and it just covered the bases so nicely. And and then he went on to play with Deep Purple since 1995, and that's its own thing. It's like, that's really a different band to me. It's an interesting band. I would call it Deep Dregs or Dixie Purple, and they've done like probably 7 or 8 records with Steve. So they're pretty consistent, and some of the more recent ones with Bob Ezrin are actually really cool. But I like him best when he's writing his own music in his own band.
Flying Colors.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, he's
very yeah. Recent super group that he's part of. Yeah, good one.
I think he's at least in the era that when he came out with the Dixie Dregs, I saw them a couple times back in the day. I mean, I don't think there was a guy that could touch him. He could do everything, and just, I saw the Dixie Dregs and just watched him, like you said, go through all those paces of rock, jazz, fusion, and then that chicken picking thing. And they would just freaking blow the roof off doing that stuff. It was just like, wow. And then, you got Andy West doing the funk bass, and he's doing chicken picking guitar. And it was,
and they got Rod Morgenstein, one amazing drummer,
Yeah. It's ridiculous. They were a ridiculous band.
They really were
good. And they wrote great songs, instrumental.
Very memorable. Yeah.
Great melodies, but really pretty intricate arranging. It had lots of surprises in it. Tunes like Odyssey and I'm Freaking Out. Go check them out, folks, if you haven't heard those.
Even those early Steve Morse Band albums also had a lot of
the introduction. Occasionally the record company would be like, you need a singer, and they make a record with a singer. They had Alex Lickerwood from Santana for a hot minute, and Van Temple from the producers sang on one of his albums. But Steve's best instrumental, I think.
No, you don't need a singer.
No.
One of the greats.
Solo, also, we talked about that last time. Saw him and Holdsworth together at a show when he was a solo show, and Steve.
Yeah, man, I can't even imagine them being in the same town at the same time, much less on the same stage. That's just,
it was crazy. It was
it's like
incredible.
When you try and push two magnets together, but you have them turned the wrong way and they won't. I mean, it's like, didn't that happen?
Yeah, pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, back to you.
Okay, Pete, I think I know what you were getting at with the guy who played Strats but doesn't really anymore. And it may be the guy that I'm talking about here, and I'm talking about Uli Jon Roth. All the music I love him with is the early Scorpion.
I know, I agree with you. Yeah, I
Strat.
It's hard to pick just 5. I was like, oh man, I really want to pick Uli, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, God, I mean, Catch Your Train and the Sails of Sharon. I mean, that's basically Yngwie before Yngwie.
Yeah, exotic like scales
Blackmore, again. And you had Blackmore doing the classical thing, and then Uli came and took Hendrix and that classical thing and mixed it together. And there's a lot of that classical thing in Uli's playing. And man, he was so precise. I saw a video of him playing on TV, Sails of Sharon with the Scorpions back in the right after it came out. And it's just like, God, he was so precise, and it was so beautifully executed, and just those note choices. And it was incredible. I know he's got his own guitar now, but those classic Scorps records with him playing a Strat, and they're amazing. So he's my number 2, and you can't really go wrong with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a top 5 player for me without a doubt. I prefer him playing Strats. I mean, nothing. The Sky guitar is kind of cool and everything like that, but it's got its own sound. And
him on the neck pickup on a Strat, just forget it.
So he doesn't break a Strat out occasionally and use that too. He's kind of just his signature guitar.
He's been playing that Sky guitar for a long time now. I don't. Yeah,
It's
he's
neat
got
looking.
these
Doesn't it have like 36 frets or something?
It's whatever it is. Yeah,
Yeah, something crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. He's still amazing though, no matter what he plays. But yeah,
Came up with some great riffs, like Polar Nights and that kind of stuff. It's just like, come on, man.
Hellcat and all that's like just
Yeah, Rudolph wasn't playing that shit.
no.
Yeah, the Sales of Sharon riff,
Yeah, that's like my favorite. Yeah, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, my next guy, one of my favorite players of all time, and he's always been I think he might have been playing Gibsons when he was in this other band called Procol Harum. Some of you might remember them, but Robben Trower, as we know him,
Oh yeah,
that guy since the very beginning, and just man, what feel, what tone. The guy could say like a million things with two notes. And whether you think he was just taking the Hendrix style to a different level, whatever. Yeah, I mean, there's some similarities there, but man, Robben is just like, he's been doing it for so long. He still plays great at, what is he, 72, 73 years old. And, For Earth Below and Twice Removed from Yesterday and Bridges Size, the live album, one of my favorite live albums of all time. The guy could burn when he wanted to. He can slow simmer when he wanted to. And I'm a sucker for wah wah, and he is the king of the wah wah in my opinion. And just the Fender Strat, wah wah, Marshall amp, doesn't get much better than that. Univibe too. I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
On top of it all, I love that sound. So yeah, Trower is a top guy for me. So that's my next choice.
Am I the only one that calls the Univibe kind of chewy sounding?
I can see that.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
I can see that.
All right.
A little bit.
Am I up?
You are.
Okay. From Robben to Robben, my number 2 guy. A guy who plays all kinds of different guitars, but I think his Telecaster is probably the best known one that he uses. He also had his own very unique Fender signature guitar. I'm talking about Robben Ford.
Yeah,
nice.
I've never actually seen his Fender signature in person. Very cool guitar, but kind of a Gibson style thing. I think it was a set neck mahogany deal there. But another incredibly tasty blues player. Definitely, some jazz inflections in there. Just one of those guys who, even when he's not playing fast, he's super impressive. Every note is like, that's the note to play. And it's like, I think I've said this on the show about Michael Schenker too. It's like you think when you're listening to, like, I could have played that, but you didn't. I didn't play that. He did, and it was perfect. And Robben Ford hits me the same way. Just incredibly tasty, incredibly accomplished. And I read a quote about him, and now I can't remember who said it, but it's like he figured out a way to play jazz and the blues without pissing jazz fans or blues fans off. But I think that fits pretty good. I wish I remembered who said it, because it was a personality that we'd all know. But
that's a fine line to walk.
yeah, he's walking it. I love the guy.
He's one of the most well-respected guitar players on the planet, I think, among his peers. Everybody's got great things to say about him. And I saw him in Washington, D.C., like in late 2019, not long before and I was there on a business trip, so it was not long before COVID-19 started. And I was blown away. He was so good. So good. He only played Les Pauls that night in particular, but he had the Dumble amp, and it was just, doesn't get much better than that. Doesn't get much better.
He's a bucket list guy for me. I still haven't checked him out. Yeah,
if you get a chance, you should go. It's really good. Really good. Yep. Classy. I mean, just everything about the performance was just amazing. He's got a great band, but every note that he played was just, like you said, just perfect and just so well executed. And the sound was great. Everything was just amazing. Really great guy.
Player's player.
Yep. All right, Sean.
You can see this guy. Dun, 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 spank. That's right. Trevor Rabin, 80s Yes guitar player. Definitely a Strat guy, kind of a hot rodded Strat, but a Strat player nevertheless. And I wasn't super keen on 80s Yes when it arrived. I was a Yes fan from a few years prior, but seeing them live on the 925 tour really impressed me and kind of made me a fan of all Yeses. And I think Yes is the kind of band that allows a guitar player to go in many different directions stylistically, probably more so than a typical rock band. So you got a lot of different sides from him, and he was kind of a master of effects as well, back then. Of course, that harmonizer solo on Owner is a good example, but that's just one. But he was like very much the anti Steve Howe in a lot of ways. He was, I got to say, he's a cleaner picker, and he might, I don't know. I love them both for different reasons. And I just think the 80s were a little more eclectic thanks to Trevor and his particular style of playing. Um, what did you guys think about him when you first he arrived?
I loved him.
Loved it too.
Yeah, he's just got a bitchin' tone. He's a really good singer, good arranger, writes some great melodies. And, Yes wouldn't be around today had he not come along and kind of gave them a new release on life without even trying, because he didn't join Yes. That wasn't his dream to be
Right.
Steve Howe's replacement at all. He was an artist in his own right that they just happened to hook up with, made a record, and then the Suits got involved and said, if you got John Anderson to sing on this, you'd sell a lot more records and get more attention. And they did. And oh, by the way, now that he's on it, you probably should call it Yes. So that's kind of how that all boiled down. But it was it was a huge record in the 80s, and I loved it when they came on MTV because it was so different from everything else, I guess.
He brought like monster rock chops into Yes, I think. Whereas I think Howe, of course, had great chops, but he was coming from more like a blues and jazz and rockabilly and a little bit of classical.
Yeah, that Chet Atkins, his rags and all this kind of really nice finger picking stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Whereas Rabin had like this, he could play really fast. He did stuff with the whammy bar and effects, and he would play with, some serious overdrive and distortion at times. So he was definitely cut from a completely different cloth.
Yeah, he was the perfect guy for Yes. I mean, you can kind of see what Yes would have been like had Howe stuck around by listening to Asia in comparison.
Right.
And that's pretty good stuff because he actually was almost as concise with Asia as he was on Drama,
Right.
which is the album where he kind of cut out all the noodling and got a good tone for once. No, not for once. Excuse me, Steve. Depends on the context. I wouldn't want too much distortion on the Yes album, Sure. So it's all what it is. But Rabin, yeah, man, it's such an eclectic player, and obviously inspired by John McLaughlin and stuff in that ballpark. He's got some incredible. You just seeing him do that solo called Sully's Beard, where he just does this incredible alternate picking on a flat top steel acoustic. It's like, yeah, that guy had some chops.
Yeah.
So.
No doubt.
Yeah, and even if you that song alone, Owner of a Lonely Heart, there's so much going on there in there guitar wise. You get that super crazy heavy guitar tone, and then that crazy solo, and then right into that beautiful clean part. And yeah, there's like just a lot of different guitar texture just in that one song.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, that was a sort of a jarring jolt of different for Yes. For that was so out of left field for them compared, when you're thinking about what you normally think of as Yes in the, coming from the 70s.
Yeah.
It was so different.
In hindsight, though, it kind of embraces the ethic of Yes, though. It's almost like they couldn't have done more stuff that sounded like the 70s and the 80s. They had to cut a new direction. And it's probably the last time they did. After that, it was kind of like, well, how can we merge the 70s and the 80s together to make all our fans happy? And that's kind of been a conundrum that
they're still trying.
Evolve with to this day to some degree. So
yeah.
I will say one of the things for me that does not work is listening to Steve Howe try and play Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Yeah.
Every time I see them and he plays it, I'm like, oh God.
He
Please.
kind of knows it. I
Sure
remember
he
when I
does.
was
I'm sure
chatting.
he's playing it, but I know they have to. But yeah.
Well, I remember on the symphonic tour, Tom Brislin played it on the keyboard. And when I interviewed him, I asked him about it. I said, how did that come about? He goes, well, I just realized that, I could do it. And he asked Steve, and Steve's like, people don't really want to hear me play that anyway. Go for it. And he nailed it note for note,
Very true, Steve. All right, Jim, what's your number? What are we at? Number 2?
Yeah, my number 2 was actually Uli Jon Roth. I skipped by accident. My number 3 was the same as your number 3, Robben Trower. So I'm just going to go Robben Trower. Now he'll be my number 2. I love the Trower. I especially love, and I know we've talked about this, I love the Caravan to Midnight, In City Dreams. I love the mellow Trower, when he gets real soulful. And because, we're talking about Fenders here. He plays, Strat. Strats are so much better with that kind of clean, they're clean and chimey. You can't really do that with a humbucker Gibson type guitar. And they're very expressive sounding. They have a lot more expression to them in general. Even when you play solos, there's a lot more character to that single coil when you bend it and when you distort it and when you add stuff to it, especially, the chewy sound, like you said, and chorus and flangers. And those guitars just, when you process in front of them, you pedal in front of them, they do so much better with that kind of modulation stuff. And on those records, like Caravan to Midnight, there's all this beautiful flanger and chorusing univibey stuff.
He hits those chords and then just taps on the pedal and it's just
and it's so textural and beautiful. And like that, like my favorite song from that record is It's For You. But there's that whole record. I remember getting them when they came out. They had those cool covers, that in City Dreams, and they were both just very spacey, mellow records. They never really got super aggro. And I love that era of Trower where he was just kind of mellowing out, and played beautifully on those records. So he was my number 3, but I'll just put him at number 2. They're interchangeable, both great. And so Robben Trower, number 2 for me.
Cool. Well, he's got to be on this list, right? Jimmy.
Yeah.
It's got to be. He's not going to be my number 1 because my number 1's been my number 1 since I was, about like this tall. But I mean, all these, we know all the albums: Electric Ladyland, Are Your Experience, Axis, freaking Band of Gypsies. What more can you say? The guy was probably the as far as rock guitar players, he was the guy, the big game changer. I think, we've had a handful of them over the last 60 years, but he was definitely the guy who revolutionized the guitar until a guy named Eddie Van Halen came along. And blues, funk, rock and roll. He was probably one of the greatest showmen ever, who strapped on a guitar and would make sounds that we had never heard before on a Stratocaster. That's mostly what he played, although you'd see him every now and then with a Flying V or a, upside down Les Paul or an SG. But for the most part, those Strats were what he went for most of the time. Those white Strats with the major fretboard. But got to have Hendrix on here. Just absolutely legendary.
Yeah, I would say he's the inventor of those inverted chords with the third is on the low. The Wind Cries Mary chords, daloon, daloon, daloon. When you instead of playing the root, you play the bottom is the third. And then everyone has just, anytime anybody does that, it's like, oh yeah, Hendrix.
Sure. Yeah.
That's him. That's all him. It's sort of like Alex Lifeson with the F sharp chord. That thing is a Hendrix chord that when you play the, with the A position, but you play the third, and you kind of tap it, Wind Cries Mary and all those other things. And anytime anybody does that on a Strat, it's like Hendrix.
Castles Made of Sand. That's another one.
Yeah, Axis is the record for me. I love
That's
that
my
record.
favorite too. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a feast of guitar tones and great psychedelic tunes.
Yep.
Lots of great panning on those records too. With the
Amazing cover. It's as colorful sounding as the cover looks.
yeah, the cover looks like the music sounds.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing some stuff in the studio that was just mind blowing for the time. You know, him with Eddie Kramer just kind of fiddling around with stuff, and it's really sad when you think about all that he was experimenting with right before he died. And a lot of that stuff has come out in subsequent years after he passed away. But man, he was onto some shit there for a while. And you know, there was all this talk of him and Miles Davis getting ready to do some stuff together. And it's just it's another one.
That would have happened. I'm sure that would.
Oh, it would have happened. Yeah, it would have happened. I mean, Miles was chasing whatever they talked about together. Miles was chasing that sound for years after Hendrix passed away, up until like the mid 80s. He finally, I think, gave up and he's like, all right, you know, I've tried all these other guitar players. I've tried Mike Stern and John Scofield. It's like, all right, whatever. I got to move on to something else at this point. But
now I'm gonna do Cyndi Lauper covers.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello.
It was cool too, but yeah, could you imagine like Miles Davis on the corner with Miles and Jimmy just kind of
get out of Dodge? That'd be amazing.
God.
You know, I think it's important to point out the effects that he was using too, because weren't some of them like created with him in mind, basically. I mean, that doesn't happen to guitar players, but it did then. Yeah. You know, with the wah, wasn't that pretty much kind of made with him in mind first? I could be mistaken, but was he the first one to use it regularly?
I don't know or Clapton might have been using it first, but Jimmy's the guy. I'm pretty sure. And what was I forget which one he was playing. The one that Jimmy was playing at the time was created for him. So I think what they did was they took a look at some of the circuitry on the one that Clapton was playing, which might have been a Vox, I think you're right. Yeah. And then the one that they made for Hendrix was a little bit different. It was wired different, but you know, the Univibe, basically that was a Hendrix creation, right?
Yep.
The Octavia stuff. Yeah. I mean, that was all Hendrix, all him.
Yeah, you could kind of hear that. It's like an octave up. It's kind of like a very crude harmonizer that sounds better than any harmonizer you ever try. Yeah. I think, because I always think harmonizers sound kind of fakey, but you could hear it at the very end of Purple Haze, that one note that just kind of hangs there and has this little metallic kind of ring to it, almost like a touch of ring modulators mixed in there or something. Yeah, that was, you know. And
he really, if you listen to, for me, I love all the various Hendrix live albums, but he reached a point like it was either late 68 or early 69, where every performance that you hear, he's using all that stuff we just talked about. Whereas earlier in his career, it was basically, you know, he would maybe have a wah-wah pedal, but it was not a lot of other things. But man, like the Woodstock performance and Isle of Wight and the Miami Pop, all that stuff around there, he's got everything there and he's using all of it. It's like he's from another planet. It's just crazy, like what he was able to do with putting all these effects together. And it all kind of made sense, but it was, at the time, it was nothing else like it. Nothing.
It was really 3 years, right?
That's it.
Really putting out music for 3 years, and you just think of the amount of 3 years is not a very long time, no. You know. But he put a lot into those 3 years.
Oh, he did. Yeah, he did. He either like was partying or playing or recording music. I don't think he slept much. I don't think he ate much. I don't think he spent much time on the ball. He basically was just like, you know, it was one or the other. That's all he did. That's all he did. Yep.
Yeah.
And hanging out with girls, because he liked that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. What do you got? Number one time. All right. Back to Chris.
Okay. So my number one can only be a letdown after Jimi Hendrix, but this guy, very, very interesting dude. Gives a great interview. He was out there playing crazy, fiery blues music in the early 80s, you know, when Stevie Ray Vaughan was the guy everybody was talking about. He was in Canned Heat. He played with John Mayall's Blues Breakers, talking about Walter Trout.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Wow, cool.
This guy, you know, you look back, he was doing everything Stevie was doing, you know, in terms of fiery energy and, you know, bombastic playing. And, you know, I think since those days, you know, having huge problems with drugs and alcohol and almost dying has made him better. The guy is even better now than he was then. And, you know, he's like one of the unsung dudes, you know, in my opinion. Most people don't know about him. Most people have never even, you know, listened to him for sure. But man, the guy can blow. He is freaking unbelievable. And a cool guy, you know. So Walter Trout, number one, just based on a personal opinion, you know, because there's all the honorable mention guys I'm going to say later that are probably better known and more popular. But I got a soft spot in my heart for this guy. He's a hell of a player and a hell of a guy.
Probably one of the greatest interviews I ever did was talking to him. He just, it's like we were sitting down in his house and he just started telling me all this stuff like we were buddies forever. And I was so appreciative. And he told me everything about what he went through when he was really sick a bunch of years ago. And just, what a great story. If anybody watching who hasn't seen that, I interviewed him probably about a year ago here on the channel, and just, man, what a great dude. And listen to his music. He's the real deal. Really is. What he's gone through, that he can still play at the level he's at now. He basically had to relearn how to play guitar. Just scary.
I think he's better than he's ever been.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Dedication for you.
Yeah.
Cool. Great pick.
Is it remiss of us that nobody picked David Gilmour?
Well,
my honorable.
Yeah.
Okay. Because, you know.
Yeah, I was thinking about putting him on my top 5 because, oh my God, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's David Gilmour.
Hey, though. What can you say?
It's almost like, I don't know. It's like,
sounds like Sean's in a conundrum. What should I pick for my?
Yeah, well,
no, my choice was easy because there's really no comparison when you can bring this guy around. Jeff Beck.
Everybody's waiting for that one too, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, come on. I mean, he had his Gibson days early on, but once he got on the Strat train, he stayed there. Yep. And kind of, you were talking about Hendrix doing things that nobody had ever done with the Strat. Well, I think Jeff managed to kind of find some other things that hadn't been done.
Oh, yeah.
And I think his playing continued to get better, which is something that he has a lot of his peers I don't think can really say. Two guys in particular that he gets lumped in with. You know who I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
I just feel like Jeff kept growing. And I think him playing with keyboard players like Jan Hammer that use the pitch wheel inspired his bar work a lot. And really kind of took it places that I haven't heard anybody else do. And then other tunes, like that tune, The Final Piece, I think it's the last song on Guitar Shop, where he just plays this whole melody with nothing but harmonics in the bar. It's just super beautiful stuff. Just what a ballsy player, but yet he can turn on a dime and play the most eloquent, beautiful stuff that just gets you right here, So, Any favorite moments from Jeff, from you guys?
I mean, geez, I was just going to say, most people, and myself included, would cite, Blow by Blow, Truth, and
Wired.
Wired as arguably his greatest moments. But I would say he kind of almost reinvented himself on that Guitar Shop album, and was doing some stuff on there that he had never really, places he'd never gone to before. It really worked.
Agreed. And then that trilogy of techno records he did in the 90s. What was it called? Who Else? You Had It Coming, and the last one was called Jeff.
Jeff, yeah.
There's some great playing and interesting arranging on those records too.
Yep. Yeah, he's an innovator for sure, without a doubt.
Great live show.
My honorable mentions, he's probably like number 6 or 7 for me. But yeah, and a really good live player too. There's an element of danger when it comes to Jeff Beck that I think I've always really liked.
I love that. And not everybody can just play a vocal melody on their guitar and sell it. And he always does. It sounds great coming from him.
Yep.
In lesser hands it would be bad, but from him it's poetic.
Yeah, true, very true.
It's one of the greats, no doubt.
All right, Jim, you're number 1.
Okay, my number 1 is probably the same as yours, Pete. So I'm gonna go there. Let's say it together.
David Gilmour. No.
Eric Clapton.
Richie Blackmore.
Well,
I mean, when you think about strat, tone, and heavy rock, it's funny because his sound is so twang. Yeah, Rainbow Rising, that's the album for me. His sound is so twangy, but it just, he created so many styles of, so those records are just so great.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, Richie, what can you say that hasn't been said about Richie? He's kind of cantankerous and fiery, and that's comes out in his playing, I'll try not to hold it against him that he tried to set Tony Carey on fire. That story about him setting his bed on fire. It's like, God, he sounds like an awful human being. But, Rainbow Rising and the first Long Live Rock and Roll and the first album and, on stage and of course, all those great Deep Purple records.
Yeah.
He's definitive heavy rock with a Strat, Richie Blackmore. So yeah, I'd pick Rising as my favorite just because it's one of my favorite albums ever of all time. But Richie Blackmore. So Pete, you could kind of pick up I'll pass the torch to you, and you could further elaborate because I know he's your favorite. So
Yeah, I mean he's my favorite. And I'll be the first to admit though, I don't care for the Blackmore's Night stuff, and I basically don't really listen to him much anymore. The newer stuff, but I mean, I grew up worshiping In Rock and Machine Head and Made in Japan and Fireball and Rising and Long Live Rock and Roll and Down to Earth and Difficult to Cure and Straight Between the Eyes, Perfect Strangers. I mean, all this stuff. That's like I've been immersed in Blackmore for most of my life, and we go back to what I said about Jeff Beck before. There's like this kind of danger about Jeff Beck. Well, Blackmore is the perfect example of that. And like I said before, you go to see Richie live back in the day with whether it was with Rainbow or Deep Purple, you never know what he's going to do from night to night. Is he going to get pissed at the audience about something? Is he going to smash his guitar? Is he going to play the encore? Is he going to not play the solo in that song? Is he going to you don't know. And that was pretty cool. And I think that's what attracted a lot of people to the bands that he played with. But he was a virtuoso and very unique. I don't think anybody at the time, you talk about the innovators back then, Jeff Beck and Clapton to an extent and Hendrix, of course. But Blackmore was every bit as much an innovator and peer of those guys in a big way, as just having such a unique style and sound. And, plus the music that he was playing, it just, again, like Jim said, he was playing this big heavy rock music on a Strat. When a lot of other guys were playing Les Pauls and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, I've always loved him. Yeah, was he cantankerous and just a really weird dude? Yes, he was. That was the mystery and the mystique about Richie Blackmore, and it made for good rock theater, right? Are he and Gillan going to come to blows tonight? And yeah, it's just something about him. I mean, I used to put on that Made in Japan album when I was
my God,
constantly, and I would just sit in front of the speakers in my parents' basement. Yes, I was one of those guys in the parents' basement back in 1982, and just listen to this over and over and over and over and over again. It's just so good.
First, I never saw him sadly, I never saw him with Deep Purple, but I did see him with Rainbow a couple of times.
Wow.
And first time I saw him was Long Live Rock and Roll tour with Dio. And it was at the Calderone. So it was just kind of this long, skinny theater with just no mezzanine, just rows. And his whole side of the stage in the aisle, there were people just crammed in the aisle about 20 rows back. He had this kind of cult, idol worship. The people just went there and they just wanted to worship Blackmore. It was really wild to see, because they all got out of their seats and they just said, well, we're standing right in front of them. And, those were great shows. I saw him that show and then a year later with Graham Bonnet for the Down to Earth tour. And, he doesn't disappoint. He's a showman. And, and Pete, would you, I'm not really sure of this, but is it him or John Lord or both that really brought that classical influence into Purple? Because I know John Lord was a classical classically trained musician.
I
But
think
Richie
John
was
was the one who started it. I think Richie was not that much into it in the beginning, but he kind of adopted that. But it was
Okay.
John was really the guy who brought it into the band.
Yeah, because you would think it was Richie by the way he pulled it off, because remember in the late '60s, rock was just basically based on blues,
Yeah.
and then you had Deep Purple coming out and playing this stuff with this kind of neoclassical guitar playing in it. But yeah, I kind of figured it was Lord, but he certainly took it and made it his own as well, and again started that Yngwie. Uli Jon Roth, Yngwie, and on and on and on, all those guys that the neoclassical thing in heavy rock is really Blackmore's responsible for it wholly, I think. So
Yeah, I agree.
for that alone, he's a trendsetter, and just by that alone. So
Love him.
Yep.
Saw Purple in '84 and '87, and the big treat was seeing him and Ian Gillan, and John Lord, I guess. Just an amazing band, and by then he was using looked like EMGs mostly. I guess a lot of people were using them then.
yeah.
But I thought Deep Purple, Perfect Strangers was like one of the best comeback albums of any classic rock band. And ask you guys, you know how Jeff Beck is always lumped together with Jimmy Page and Clapton. Well, in my mind, Blackmore's always lumped in with Tony Iommi and Jimmy Page again, and I'm just wondering.
Nothing like either of them.
I know he isn't, but it's kind of like those were the three big British rock bands that's kind of got thrown together. So yeah, it's kind of like that. But I would say that Richie was the most talented of the three when it came to just straight up guitar playing.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Sure. Cool. Anybody have any honorables that have not been mentioned already?
I do.
I got a few.
Sure, I've got a few.
Let's go through. I'll jump in whenever.
All right, Chris, what do you got?
I've got Danny Gatton,
I
Telecaster
was
player,
gonna mention him.
crazy,
Good choice.
crazy talented freak player. Amazing guy. There he is.
That's right.
Yeah.
The
Of
humbler.
course, Stevie Ray. People in the comments would probably give us death threats if we didn't mention Eric Johnson.
Oh yeah.
Good player.
Geez, I think you guys have mentioned my others. Uli, Clapton, sure, why not? So those are the ones that were on the list that I don't think anybody's talked about. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Sean, you got any others?
Yeah, I think the first one that comes to mind is Adrian Belew from King Crimson and Zappa's band.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't call him the twang bar king for nothing, and Les Paul doesn't come with a twang bar, at least not normally. So yeah, just another mad scientist of the guitar. I mean, it's no wonder he hooked up with Robert Fripp, because they both are kind of that mindset. Like, I'm going to do something with the guitar that's never been done. And Adrian, all the more so, I think, all of his crazy elephant sounds and other sounds that he was doing stuff that just nobody had done up to that point. And, he went on to play Parker Flies a lot. They made one especially for him. But, I think I like him best when he's playing a Strat. And I noticed recently he went back to Strats. Like, he was using a whole laptop thing MIDI'd into a Parker Fly. And I saw him with that, and it sounded fine. But I noticed lately he's gone back to a Strat. And, he's playing with Jerry Harrison from Talking Heads. And they're out there with this amazing backing band playing all of the Remain in Light album from Talking Heads. So if you like, and Adrian put some really great squiggly guitar all over that record.
Squiggly is a good way to put it.
It's one of his best moments, I think. So I can't wait to see that tour. That's going to be awesome. Another Strat guy we got to mention probably is the Scotsman, Mark Knopfler.
Yep.
He was on my,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he has such an eloquent, beautiful sound. I know some people think he's just a secondhand Richard Thompson, but I'd like to think he's got more going for him than that. And he's a lot better known than Richard Thompson is in rock circles anyway. But I definitely do see a kind of a stylistic similarity there.
Yeah, I was really blown away when I remember hearing Sultans of Swing when it first came out on the radio.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, what is that sound? And how is he doing that? He's beautiful, arpeggiated picking, and he's a finger pick guy, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's all fingers.
All
They
fingers.
have a album called Live Alchemy. The live version of Sultans on that is incendiary. It's ridiculous. It's
It's so good. Yeah, it's
yeah,
just like I wasn't a huge fan. Like I didn't like the, I want my MTV song really that much and all that. But when I heard Sultans of Swing, that beautiful clean tone he had, and how amazingly articulate he was and fast and just
yeah.
finger picking. I didn't know what it was. I'm like, how is he getting that sound? I
And
was just blown away by that.
he does some really unique bends that I haven't seen too many other people do.
Yeah.
Also, so even like just if you learn Sultans, there's some it's a song where you really have to play those licks. You can't just bullshit your way through it in D minor. Every one of those licks people know. And I had to actually cover it last summer, and it was the hardest thing was trying to remember what order to put the licks in to remember exactly where they all went. I could play them, but remembering the order they went in, that was the hard part. Like if I was in a cover band playing it every Saturday night, I'm sure I'd remember pretty quick. But just a one-off, that was the hardest part of it, was just remembering those. Yeah, great player.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
And one other guy I want to mention, the studio cat out of LA named Michael Landau.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just oh my, nobody's ever heard of him, but you've heard him. He hooked up with Ted Leonard, who produced a lot of Madonna stuff in the '80s. So you've heard him on all kinds of studio stuff. I saw him. There's another Strat player I really love, a guy out of New York named Wayne Krantz. He's kind of a jazz fusion guy. He toured with Steely Dan back in '96, and just fantastic player. And I actually saw them with Jimmy Herring on this they were called the Ringers, and it was like a three-way guitar, kind of like a G3 for fusion guys, I guess is how I'd put it. And it was a really cool show. Yeah.
Awesome.
Right on.
Jim, you got any left that we didn't cover?
Yeah, there's a couple guys, and some of them they sound like I don't remember if they are actually playing Fenders or not. One obviously definitely is JY from Styx.
Yeah, he was on my
Oh yeah.
And what a great man, a super aggressive tone and style he did. And he was always on, it was like a white Strat. I saw him back in the heyday, 78, 77. Great guitar player, great vicious tone. His vocals kind of went right along with his guitar playing. He was like really great.
Very much, yeah.
So yeah, I like JY a lot. I saw, and this is a guy I'd never heard of until a couple of years ago. Saw him open for. I saw Pat Travers in a small club in Hermosa Beach, very small club. A place I saw Michael Schenker like a year later too. Really great, a little club. But for opening for Pat Travers was Eric Gales.
Oh yeah.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
And left-handed, he plays a Strat, right? If I'm not mistaken. And he did the most amazing instrumental version of Don't Fear the Reaper. It was so cool. I don't know if you've ever seen it. He kind of plays the melody and the chords, super clean, beautiful, very Hendrixy, obviously, but man, that guy's a good player, man. Really good player. And I was 99. It was like, that was a Strat. Yeah. So I had him as a mention. Joe Walsh, I mentioned before, but I'm going to mention him now. I mean, the James Gang and that stuff he did with the Eagles, and his solo stuff. What a great bender of notes. That guy really, he did the stuff he did lead-wise bend with his bends and just his styles. Man, Joe's a badass.
Yeah, he did some really signature licks, like that one that's on Dirty Laundry, that kind of weird descending, kind of flatted 50 kind of. It almost sounds like a Robert Fripp lick, but it's a Joe lick. I've heard him using it on some other songs too, but some really surprising note choices from him sometimes, and
yeah,
great slide player too.
Yeah, great slide, and like the intro to Funk 49. Just that, and the middle break when that's so Joe. Such a great, a very articulate, very lyrical guitar player.
Turn to Stone song. Whew. So good.
Yeah.
So good.
I mean, he's amazing. And, you know, we talked about David Gilmour. I mean, as a guy who, at a young age, realized that I have a bum finger. I can't bend my first finger. I think I've told you guys that. So I had to learn how to play, to sound like a good guitar player and play slower. So I gravitated towards, you know, Michael Schenker, all his slow stuff, all the Lifes and slower stuff, and being more melodic. And, you know, who does that better than David Gilmour? You know, one long note with a bunch of delay, a beautiful bend, awesome phrasing. Um, you know, obviously one of the biggest bands in the world is like and a man. He was a Strat guy, right? Strat,
Very
was he
much.
Kelly or a
Yep.
Strat guy?
Mostly Strat. I mean, he played Telly on a few things. He usually
was-
broke one out for Run Like Hell in
Yeah.
Drop D. You know, he played a less occasionally. I believe the solo on Another Brick is actually done on a Les Paul.
That's what they say.
Yeah, with you know
Les Paul,
with the
P90
soap
right into the board.
PAF, you know, soap bars. So it's almost like it's still a single coil. It's just a fatter version.
Fatter one, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, his time and all those amazing solos. I mean, come on, they, you know, said so much with so little, you know, and that's what I really love about him is just that one long note singing and just, you know, as everything with Pink Floyd, it's very slow and ethereal and all of that atmospheric. But yeah, he was my other, and Alex Lifeson was a runner up, but we discussed that already. You know, he was my favorite of the Gibsons, but his Strat era I really liked too. So
Yeah, that was some of his best stuff, I think.
yeah, yeah,
Some of his best rhythm playing for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Great leads too, come to think of it.
I think all of my guys have pretty much been mentioned with the exception of two. And I had Stevie Ray and Uli and Gilmour and all those guys and Jeff Beck on my list too. Tom Bolin.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention him earlier.
Yep, Tommy Bolin. And another guy hasn't been around that long. He's kind of a blues guy. He's from Wales, but I think he lives in Canada now. Philip Sace, or Sace, however he says his name. Smoking player. Oh, so good. So good. He kind of takes like the Stevie Ray type of thing and amps it up a notch. It's a little more rock based, I think. A little more funk than Stevie. But man, some serious technique. This guy. Got Chris turned me out to him a couple of years back.
He needs to put out. Supposedly, he's been teasing a new album for like the last 6 months, and it's not here.
Yeah.
And I think Matt Schofield too. I thought you were going to say him when you said
He's another
guy.
one. He's really
Welsh or whatever.
Yeah.
Good player, blues guy.
Yep. So there you have it, everybody.
Hey, before we go, Pete, can we show off our guitars?
Oh, we can do that real quick. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
That's my share.
I don't have any Fenders to show off, just Squires. They're
We've
not
got an amazing Gibson collection.
Gibson and knockoffs. You know, double coils. Yeah, nice. You guys all got Strats.
I got this one. This is what they call the big block Strat. They only made it for a few years. In the 90s, it's the guitar my 17-year-old self would have died for. It's got the mirrored pickguard and the humbucker and 2 single coils. And it has the square inlays. That's why they call it the big block, because that's
nice.
kind of a Gibson touch.
Yeah. So how's the radius on that neck? Is it a flatter radius or is it like a typical Fender radius?
It's got a little curve to it, but not as much as some of them. And these are like DiMarzios or something. I bought it used, but it was somebody's fire-breathing metal beast, as it should be. I mean, looking like that, you know, you're not after subtlety.
Right.
Yeah.
The good thing is you got 2 single coils and the double. So you got a little bit of a Swiss Army knife going on there, which is good.
Yeah, and there's something about that metal pickguard that gives it a little edge too. Almost like the way it resonates through there affects the tone just a little bit.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. What do you got, Pete?
Mine's an American. This is a 2019, I believe. And Rosewood, great guitar. Sounds great, plays great. Love the neck on it. It's a beast. I like best Strat I've ever owned, without a doubt.
Nice.
3 singles?
Yep.
Okay.
Break that out to play a Deep Purple riffs, huh?
Yeah.
The best guitar I own. This is a 65 reissue. but the neck on it is from a Hot Rod 60s Strat, which I didn't know existed until I realized that this wasn't the original neck on this guitar when I bought it. But it has a compound radius, and it goes from 7 1/4, which is like regular Fender, up to 12 up here.
Oh, wow.
Is very nice.
That's
And
cool.
got big, medium jumbo frets, 6105s on it. So this thing plays like butter.
That's
Best guitar. If I had to own one guitar, this would be it.
Would you say it's gold or more of a kind of a brown?
Shoreline gold, they call it.
Okay, yeah, I like that shade.
It's sort of a goldish silver.
Here's another one I picked up. I've had for quite a while. It's probably the most stratty sounding one I have, despite the humbucker. It's nothing special. It's made in Mexico, but it's
That's like the old one that I had that I sold. Yeah, it's very
okay.
simple.
I like that kind of I don't know what they call that, quilted kind of top. So yeah, it's
like that quilted sunburst. They have on the strap.
Flame on it.
it's more of a metallic tone.
Yeah,
But my number one for many years, Pete, go ahead first.
yeah. It's my this is my Telly, my butterscotch. Love it.
Butterscotch. I like those.
Yeah, it's great. It's a must have. I've always wanted one. It's rock solid, but it's just a good all around playing guitar. You're not going to play metal on it or anything like that, but for me, when I want to play a little blues and just it's a go-to one. Nice neck too, even though I still kind of always wonder what it would be like with a rosewood fretboard, but okay.
Be like this.
Like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. What year is that, Christian?
This is an 18 American original 60s Telecaster. Got the binding on it.
Oh, the
yeah.
binding. That's
Pretty.
Yeah. She's beautiful. Love this one. Probably my second best Fender after the other one. So
Any of you
all
guys
the other
have
ones are
any
put away.
lines? You guys have thin lines? Any of you guys have a thin line?
Mm.
They're cool sounding guitars, man.
I have a Telly with an F hole in it that's a Squire. Looks cooler than it sounds. And this is like this was my number one for many years. I guess you call that a Shoreline Gold. It's almost a little lighter.
Maybe
But,
ink and silver.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on the light you get it under. It can look gold or silver, but I'd say this is more of a goldish color. Kind of a Lexus gold. It kind of makes me think of the shade a car might have been. Anyway, this is the most Gibson sounding Fender I have, and I love it because it's just huge and fat. You can thank Dave Murray for inspiring me to get the 2 humbuckers. He was the first guy I really loved that had that sound going on.
Nobody mentioned him.
Well, we're going to mention him now because he's totally great Strat player. Yeah, this was like my main guitar for many, many years. And it's still, it's just, some of them leave a little bit to be desired when it comes to tone or the way they cut through the mix. You don't have any of those problems with this. It's just, it gets the job done really nicely. And
Cool.
It's been it's been a while since I've taken her out and played her. I think I need to put her on the list and get her in rotation again.
Talking to you?
Well, she said, you've been messing around with that damn SG all month, playing Who stuff. Come on, play me.
Yeah, well, who could blame you for that, man?
Yeah.
Can't blame you for that, man. SG's a
Yeah, you don't take a Strat to a Who party. I don't care. Pete's played them for the last 30 years. He's a Gibson man as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if you're playing Tommy, then you play what he played it on back in the day, not some newfangled Strat.
Yeah.
True.
So Pete, any chance we could do another show about everything that's left over that we hadn't talked about yet? Gretches and Rickenbackers and Mosrites and all these.
Perhaps Paul Reed
Okay.
Smiths and all that kind of stuff.
Think about it.
the other. It's funny because if you think about, in the 70s up to like the early 80s, basically it was Gibson or Fender.
Yeah. Now
And the occasional, Ibanez and everything was, even though they were great guitars, the pros were not using them.
right.
It was a Gibson or Fender, and Gretsch was kind of a 50s, 60s thing, but not really in the 70s. So it was Gibson or Fender, and that was it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
And then the
it's
80s happened, and everyone started making guitars. So
crazy. So there you have it, everybody. A Fender exclusive show. So list some of your favorite Fender players down in the comments below. If there's any great ones we missed, we'll be happy to see them. I think I threw another name at the end, Glenn Tipton from Judas Priest, which I had on my original big long list. He's another one. But yeah, so thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Make sure you catch Sean. You want to give a quick little update on what's going on over at
Live? Well, my shows have been slowed down a bit since I took on this new job, but I'm doing a few here and there, and I did one today with YouTube reaction video sensation Doug Helvering. You might have seen the videos, a classical composer reacts to Yes or whatever. Well, I had a chat with him for an hour, and I said, how did you make it this far in your life without hearing all this music?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Did you have a religious household that wouldn't? He's like, no, we were just very into sports, and the only time I heard any rock was like on the way home from the ball game at the end of the night, and I just got into classical stuff and wrote my own stuff, and I didn't have time until now. Anyway, he's got a pretty cool show that you all might have seen, and I just thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about this because he's all about prog rock and metal. Like every Monday, he talks about an Iron Maiden song, and it's one of his most popular features. Where he'll sit there and go, okay, they're going from E minor to C minor here. Okay, now we're in 7. You know, it's nothing too deep. You know, it's like if you know a little bit of theory, then you can dig his show without him talking about giant jazz chords and stuff. You know, a la Rick Beato, who's amazing in his own right too. But it's a different kind of application of the knowledge there. That's a little deeper theoretic.
Watching Dave have his mind and ears blown listening to like Frank Zappa and Gentle Giant for the first time was actually quite entertaining, I thought.
Absolutely, because it's just like we know what he's in for.
Right. We know this stuff really well. I'm like, how does this guy not know this stuff? And then he's just like, did you hear that? I'm like, wow, that's pretty funny.
He admitted that, he usually is kind of detached emotionally when he's doing this stuff. He just does it from a theoretical angle. But he said one of the tunes that really blew his mind and touched him was Close to the Edge. He just, and I can see that because there's a lot of classical influence in that piece of music. And it'd be, if you're going to turn a classical guy onto rock music, that'd be a pretty good place to start,
Yeah.
Or it'd seem kind of familiar. So anyway, yeah, it's /soul, SOAL, Night Live over there. And I've got over 100 episodes chatting with all kinds of prog rock and classic rock folks. So come over and sub, that'd be great. And I'll have some more new shows in the works. I've got a wish list I'm still trying to make come to life. So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Awesome.
Hey, I saw a friend of mine bumped into Eddie Jobson at the train station the other day in New York. And I was like, Anthony, why can't this be you?
Exactly. I saw that picture. I was like, oh, that's too funny. He's probably like, crap. How did I miss that?
Yeah, no doubt.
Too funny. Jim, you got any upcoming shows you want to promote?
No, I'm just, doing my thing. And I say, if anybody wants to see anything, hear anything I do, seek out Hitman Destroy All Humans, that album I put out last year. And I like to send people to the Blinded by the Light cover that I did with my band Cold Stars from Mars, and Mike Portnoy and Jeff Scott Soto and Melody Portnoy all guesting. I did the whole, produced the song, I did the video, all 7.5, 8 minutes of it. It's a really fun watch. And that's my current, one of my current projects, Cold Stars from Mars, which is my old band Fuzzbubble, just kind of in this 20 years later or whatever. So
cool.
That's about it.
Awesome. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next month with another edition of the Guitarist Corner. I am Pete Pardo for Christian Canzoneri and Sean Tonar and Jim Bacchi. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you real soon. Stay tuned for the Monsters Den tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.